Hey, so it's May of 2022, and that's the 10-year anniversary of my coming into my position as Executive Director of the TEC Conference. It's also the 10-year anniversary of a number of big changes that happened in my life, and so we thought this would be a good opportunity for me to pause and share that story with some of the folks who have not heard it before, because it's kind of a pivotal moment in my life. So a decade ago in 2012, I was practicing law. I had been practicing law for about a decade at a small firm in New Orleans. And Sarah and I had been married since 2005. We just bought this house that I'm filming this in front of, and working on adoption stuff. I had been involved in my local tech community since, I don't know, probably for 15 years at that point, and had served in leadership in my tech community, which was very fulfilling and something I really enjoyed. I had also been involved for a long time at a summer camp here in the Archdiocese of New Orleans called Camp Abbey. I was a camper and a counselor and an administrator. That place was really, really formative for me in my early and adolescent years. But the camp had closed, unfortunately, for insurance reasons. The monastery that owns the property had closed it back in 2006. And so it had been dormant for 6 years, which was something that was a bitter disappointment for a lot of us. So in 2012, I found myself unhappy in my professional career, wishing that I could do something else. I had a season of life earlier before law school where I had served in education and in some ministry roles, and found myself wishing that I could do something more substantially there. There's of course a challenge when you go to law school and other postgraduate things. You can incur a lot of debt, and so I didn't think that was really a possibility for me. I thought I was kind of locked into a legal career where I really didn't feel like my gifts were being used in the world, and where my level of professional satisfaction was pretty low. So in 2012, I found myself serving for about, I don't know, maybe 8 years in the TEC Conference. So on the board of directors called the Leadership Council, and in other, committees or ministry teams for a number of years, and really found engaging on the international level of tech to be really fulfilling and a good use of my gifts as kind of a side thing while I was practicing law. And we have meetings twice a year, and we had a meeting coming up in Festus, Missouri, right outside of St. Louis. And in the month before that meeting, I had a federal trial in Louisiana, and it went fine, but I was violently ill during the trial. I had flu-like symptoms, but the trial could not be continued to a later date, so we went ahead and did it. When I came home from the trial, I was completely exhausted, just feeling terrible. I slept for a day. Woke up in the middle of the night, 2 nights in a row, with chest pain, nausea, like heaviness in the chest, left arm pain, all sorts of like cardiac symptoms. The first night I convinced myself, look, you're in your mid-30s, there's no way, this is just anxiety or sleep deprivation or flu stuff, and waited it out and went back to sleep eventually. The second night we went ahead into the emergency room, and once they put the EKG stuff on you, and they said, yeah, you're having some sort of a cardiac event, no matter what your age is. So they wheeled me into the cath lab or whatever it's called, and intravenously went and checked out for blockages and things like that. What we ultimately learned, I stayed in the critical care unit for 3 days and 3 nights. They were trying to figure out what was going on with me. What they determined was I had had a cardiac event. They weren't willing to call it a heart attack. I had no blockages. It could be related to the flu-like symptoms getting into the pericardium. It could be stress related as well, but that I had markers, I think that's the term, markers in my blood that showed I'd had a cardiac injury. So it wasn't psychosomatic or anything like that. There was actual heart injury that took place, but it was kind of a difficult thing for them to diagnose with a lot of certainty because they could not confirm their initial diagnosis of what's called pericarditis, which is a inflammation of the pericardium around the heart. So went home, and the cardiologist told me stress seems to be a part of this, but it's not the only part of this, and I would challenge you to really think seriously about like what's causing stress in your life and how to manage that better. Little did he know that for 6 months before this event, I had been sniffing around trying to figure out a way into some sort of ministry or administrative, educational, administration of ministry role, which would take me out of the practice of law as my primary source of income, and just had not been successful for 6 months in kind of finding something. While I was home convalescing and healing up from this episode, the Leadership Council of the TEC Conference, which I was a board member of at the time, was having a meeting. And for the first time in, I don't know how many years, I had to miss one of the in-person meetings. And my predecessor, Ron, had been talking about retiring for a few years, and we just did not know what we would do after Ron, and so we would always ask him, just stay another year, just stay another year. Well, I sent a message to some of my cohorts on the council and said, listen, if Ron is serious about retiring, I might consider submitting my name for the role of executive director. But I'm planning on making a move out of law in the next year. And so I don't know, maybe that's something that we need to have a whole process. And if the process takes a year, I may have already accepted a position somewhere else. So I sent that message and I said, they're going to pray about it. It's a discerning prayer-based group. And if they think there's something here, they'll call back. If not, that's okay. Meanwhile, I had also been serving for the preceding 6 or 12 months on a committee to try to renovate and revive Camp Abbey, this retreat center and summer camp facility that I had been involved with as a young man. And as an attorney, I brought a few different skills to the committee that was working on this project. Well, we were nearing the end of the renovation by this time in March of 2012, and it was decided that the summer camp is such a huge part of this program that we really needed someone to orchestrate the summer camp program, seasonally speaking. And I was asked, would I consider coming in as kind of a part-time seasonal employee just to run the summer camp program. And so I saw kind of in this moment, this idea of putting myself forward for the summer camp administrator position at Camp Abbey and putting myself out there for the executive director position with TEC. And I thought, let me just kind of see where this goes. Well, I received a call back very quickly, within a day or two, I think, when they were in the meeting in St. Louis, inviting me, asking a couple of follow-up questions. They actually asked me for a resume, which I didn't have one brushed up at the time. They asked me for an updated resume and a few other critical questions. Anyway, the whole thing kind of came together really quick, so that within 2 weeks of the heart episode, I had been offered and I had accepted both the positions at TEC and at Camp Abbey. And when I went back into the office, I was able to tell my boss, who was very gracious, that I'd be stepping away from the practice of law effective May 1st, which was a big surprise to him. And I don't know. I am not wired to look for the hand of providence. I'm not wired to look for moments where God intervenes in my daily life by nature. But I really do see that as a moment where I was being cared for, where my own sense of fulfillment and joy and purpose were reactivated. So that's kind of the story of how this all began a decade ago. I was shocked in talking to one of my predecessors, Janet Dre, to come to the realization that in serving a decade in this role, I'm now the longest serving executive director in our organization's history. It doesn't feel that way. And I feel affirmed in the sense that I still have all this energy and ideas and passion and now experience to bring to the TEC family. And I just want to thank all of you who've been part of this journey, who've been participating on the Leadership Council and on ministry teams and have given charitably to the TEC Conference and have shared words of encouragement with me over these 10 years. I've really been grateful to be part of a larger group of people who have the same mission that I can share in and play a part in leading. So that's my story. Here we are a decade later, and I'm just filled with gratitude. And for those of you that have reached out and wished me a happy 10-year anniversary at both TEC and at Camp Abbey, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm grateful to continue to serve and to feel like I'm answering the call. So God bless you.